Being accused of drink driving is a pretty stressful experience. Most people who are arrested for driving with excess alcohol have never had to deal with the police before, let alone face an appearance before the Magistrates Court. A conviction can be a life-changing experience, so it's important to make the right decisions when you instruct a lawyer. This guide will help you if you've been arrested for drink driving and have to return to a police station on bail, charged with driving with excess alcohol and given bail to go to a magistrates court, received a postal requisition to attend a magistrates court for driving with excess alcohol, or convicted and sentenced by a magistrates court and you want to appeal to the Crown Court. I've mentioned a charge of driving with excess alcohol, but the information here is just as valid for drug driving, dangerous driving, failing to provide a specimen, being drunk in charge of a motor vehicle, failing to stop after an accident, or any other kind of motoring offence. The guide only applies to England and Wales. The legal system is different in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and in the rest of the world. During the presentation, I'll help you to answer two questions. Number one is, what are the different types of lawyer? And number two, where can I find information to help me choose? There are three options when you go to court. The first option is that you have no lawyer, or you represent yourself. The second option is that you instruct a solicitor. And the third option is that you choose a barrister. Let's go through those options one by one. Plenty of people go to court without a solicitor or a barrister. Many of them do get good results, and they often do a good job of representing themselves. It can be a good option if you're confident about speaking in public yourself, although having said that, courts can sometimes be quite daunting and unforgiving. It might be difficult for you to get your points across. You should get some help at court from the magistrate's legal advisor. You won't be able to speak to them before the hearing, but they will be there advising the magistrates and advising you during the hearing itself. If you want some help to prepare before you go into court, then representing yourself is not really an option. So if you want a lawyer to help you decide whether to plead guilty or not guilty, or if you want a lawyer to advise you about what are the good things to say in mitigation if you're convicted or if you plead guilty, and what are perhaps the things that you shouldn't say, then representing yourself isn't an option, and you might want to think about a solicitor. Most people who instruct a lawyer in the Magistrates Court go there with a solicitor. All solicitors are qualified to represent people in the Magistrates Court. They go through a series of qualifications, and they're accredited by the Law Society and regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority. Having said that, you should try and find a solicitor who is experienced in dealing with your type of case. So that means at the very least a solicitor who is experienced in dealing with criminal litigation, and maybe one who's particularly experienced at dealing with motoring offences and dealing with drink driving. I'm going to look at five different types of solicitor. Firstly, the duty solicitor, then a local general practice solicitor, a local criminal defence solicitor, a specialist national motoring firm, or a specialist individual solicitor. Firstly, the duty solicitor. All magistrates courts have a duty solicitor who is there to provide free representation for anybody who doesn't have their own lawyer. The duty solicitor is free. They are a fully qualified solicitor, and they have to do additional qualifications to deal with criminal cases. They can represent you for one hearing. So if you go to court and plead guilty, that's okay, but if your case gets adjourned for trial, you can't ask the duty solicitor to continue to represent you. They often deal with several cases a day, so they have to take all of the cases, all of the eligible cases for people who don't have their own lawyer. So you might only get a short consultation, and you might have rather a long wait before your case goes into court. You won't be able to meet the duty solicitor before your day in court. So they will be there at court, you'll find them at court, and they can help you before you go into the hearing and then represent you in the hearing itself. The next category of solicitor I'm going to look at is a local general practice solicitor. Lawyers usually call these high street firms. They don't actually have to be on a high street, but often they are. This is the type of firm that has departments dealing with family matters, dealing with divorces, conveyancing, dealing with wills. Maybe they do accident claims and a whole list of other services. Sometimes they'll have a department that deals with criminal litigation, or even a specialist motoring solicitor, but they may not. Now, this is often the type of firm that you know and trust. You may have been to them before for something else. You can often visit them for a consultation before court. but you should check that they do have the correct experience. Some solicitors firms won't deal with this kind of case at all, and in fact will refer you on to somebody else they know who can help out. Now, the person that they might refer you on to could be a local criminal defence solicitor. This might be a department in a general practice firm, or it could be a firm that only does criminal defence work. If you want to see if you can get legal aid, if you might be eligible for legal aid, then you will need to go to a local criminal defence solicitor. All of the lawyers there will have experience dealing with cases in the Magistrates Court, and they may have somebody who's got particular knowledge about drink driving cases. When you go to court with a local criminal defence solicitor, sometimes they can be quite busy because they'll deal with lots of private cases and lots of legal aid cases at court. So it is worth checking with them whether they will just be representing you on the day in court or whether they will be there with several other people as well. Now, if you do a Google search for drink driving solicitors, then quite often the national motoring firms will come up either in the adverts or in the normal searches. These are firms that only deal with motoring cases, so anything from speeding to drink driving and dangerous driving and above. They may offer you a telephone or a face-to-face consultation before you go to court. Quite often with these firms, because they're based in one place and they deal with cases, lots of cases all over the country, it's possible that the person that you speak to on the phone won't be the person that represents you in court. They may instruct a barrister or another solicitor to come along and represent you, or they may represent you themselves. In many ways similar to the national specialist firms, are specialist individual solicitors. So these are solicitors who set up on their own, maybe with an assistant or a paralegal, sometimes with another lawyer, but they set up on their own, and you can go direct to them. So that normally means that you speak to the solicitor direct. The solicitor deals with everything to do with your case, perhaps with the assistance of somebody else. And normally, if they can, they will represent you in court themselves as well. So there's the advantage of having the same person dealing with the case throughout. Usually, once a solicitor's set up on their own to deal with this kind of case, then it normally means that they've got some deep experience before they've set up on their own. It's not always the case, but it's quite often the case that the specialist individual will have some significant experience. The second group of lawyers that we're going to look at are barristers. The main difference between solicitors and barristers is that solicitors are general lawyers qualified to deal with all types of legal work. They're not necessarily specialist advocates or specialised at going to court, but they are authorised to appear in magistrates courts, county courts, various other tribunals. Barristers are usually specialist advocates, which means they're trained to appear in court. They're allowed to deal with cases in the Crown Court and the High Court. And in fact, they can appear in all types of court. Having said that, nowadays, the distinction between solicitors and barristers, so between the general lawyer and the specialist court lawyer, is becoming a bit blurred. Solicitors can now do a lot of work that barristers used to do, and barristers can often do, or could now do some of the work that solicitors used to be reserved for solicitors. Two different ways to get a barrister. You can either go to a barrister direct, or you can instruct a barrister via a solicitor. Direct access barristers accept instructions from the general public. Now, that might seem a bit strange, but traditionally you've always had to go to a barrister via a solicitor. But nowadays there's a direct access scheme, and some barristers will accept instructions direct, usually through their chambers. You contact their chambers and they will put you in touch with the barrister. Technically, you brief the barrister and the barrister does the court work. The barrister will be able to do some preparation work and maybe able to have a conference with you before the case, but you often do the legwork yourself. Although some barristers nowadays have qualifications to do litigation, and so they will help you out a lot more before you actually go to court as well. Second way to instruct a barrister, which is the traditional way of doing so, is via a solicitor. So you go to a solicitor, and the solicitor may instruct a barrister on your behalf to actually come to court, or you can always ask for a barrister instead of a solicitor to actually come and do the hearing. Some solicitors will charge extra for this. With other solicitors, it might be part of the fee that they already charge you. Now we're going to look at different ways of finding a lawyer. I'll talk about recommendations, online searches, and then talk about speaking to the lawyers and checking their credentials. Recommendations are always the best starting point, and your best starting point is to ask family, ask friends, ask work colleagues, see if they know a solicitor that's represented them in the past, or they may know a solicitor who could refer you on to somebody else. And that goes on to the second point, which is if you already know a solicitor who you trust from dealing with some other kind of matter or dealing with a motoring matter before, go to them. They might be able to represent you themselves. If not, then they can refer you on to somebody who does deal with drink driving cases. So that's step one, recommendations. Stage two is the online search. Most people will go online and they search Google for drink driving lawyer plus their location. So you might put drink driving lawyer in Manchester, drink driving lawyer in London, or be more specific and say drink driving solicitor or drink driving barrister plus your location. You'll get a big list of lawyers on there. The adverts at the top are mainly for the national motoring firms. The results on the map should be more local firms, although some national firms make it onto the map as well. And then you'll have a whole list of solicitors who have various articles and have been noticed by Google as being experts at dealing with drink driving. So that's how you can deal with the online search. Nowadays, it's also worth looking for reviews, and that could be part of your online search. So look on Google for reviews, look on Trustpilot for reviews, things like 3 best rated and drink driving specific review sites also can be helpful. So have a look at some reviews and some experience of what other people have thought about various lawyers in the past. Stage 3 is to phone up and speak to them. All lawyers' websites pretty much have a telephone number on there. Give them a call. Don't just choose the first lawyer that you speak to. It's a good idea to call 3 or 4 lawyers and perhaps speak to the one that you like the best. Remember, you're dealing with a person, and so if that person gives you good service and provides you with useful information on the phone, then they may be the person to represent you in court. You should always ask to speak to the solicitor or the lawyer in person. Ask what kind of experience that person has dealing with your case, and if you do reach a situation where you can't speak to the lawyer in person, can't speak to the solicitor or barrister in person, then you might want to ask why. Quite often, if you're just speaking to paralegals and assistants all the time, then that's perhaps unhelpful, and you may want to try and speak to the lawyer themselves, because then you can get an idea about what kind of thing they're going to be saying on your behalf in court. Lots of ways of checking lawyers' credentials. All solicitors and barristers are fully regulated. That's the link on the slide there is for the Law Society Find a Solicitor website. There's a similar thing for the Bar Council, and they're the ones who deal with barristers. So if somebody says that they're a solicitor, then they should be a solicitor and they should appear on those lists. There are various extra credentials, certainly for solicitors. Neither of them are essential for dealing with motoring cases, but you can look out on the Law Society Find a Solicitor website. They will show if a solicitor has accreditation for criminal litigation. That means that the lawyer has been vetted by the Law Society and given extra training in criminal cases, in particular dealing with police station and magistrates court cases. You can also look out for higher court rights for solicitors. That means the solicitors had an extra qualification, which means they can go to the Crown Court and the Court of Appeal. Once again, it's not necessarily an essential for motoring cases, because if they're in the Magistrates Court, any solicitor can deal with it, but it will give you an idea that solicitor has some extra experience in dealing with advocacy. So that's all for this presentation. On the final slide here, you can see how you can contact me. There's my email address, my website, Twitter and Facebook as well.